Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Matt Gardner, and today I have Dr. Michele PERRON on the show today. Sorry, Michele, I couldn't help myself. I needed to do the accent. It's fun. How are you today? Thank you for coming on the show.
I'm excited. I'm happy to be here today.
Yes.
Feeling good and feeling ready.
Excellent. Excellent. I love the background. We were just talking about that. You're set up somewhere in and around Lake Superior. I love it. Love it. So yeah, very cool. We connected. We're actually both out of members of Kyle Cease's community, the Absolutely Everything Pass Evolving Out Loud. Sort of met in the lineup at
waiting to get into the auditorium.
It was cool, right? It was one of those things that was
Yeah.
meant to be. So, and here we are some few months later connecting. So I really appreciate you coming on and great to see you again.
Oh, thank you. Great to see you again, Matt. How's the weather up there?
Actually, you've been very nice. So it was a long winter for us as far as like very cold. Like it was cold way later than it usually gets. So now I'm very much enjoying the sun is out. I love springtime. It's my favorite season. Getting a little bit smoky though. The forest fire season has started early over here. How about out your guys' way?
Yeah, we don't have forest fire season, but what they are warning us about is the Canadian winds that are going to bring the smoke to us by this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. That's over here. We're sending it your way.
Yeah, that's okay.
Apologies.
The wind will take it east.
Yeah,
so
that's
good.
Right. I guess that's the thing about being so close to those Great Lakes. There's just a wind. I bet you there's just wind
all the time.
all the time, right? Yeah. Very cool. Well, we lots to talk about, and we had, as it turned out, we were talking for about 20 minutes before I even got started. Just so many topics I'd like to go over with you. You're the Sinclair Method. I want to hear about this. You're big into like moderation, the idea of a moderation. So, before we get too far into the podcast, I do want to say for the listeners that are doing, a 12-step program or something that's very much abstinence based, I guess more of a trigger warning. If you're able to be exposed to the idea of like moderation techniques and such, by all means, keep listening. But I would also suggest if that will be something that is triggering, I wanted to let the audience know that we will be discussing the idea of moderation and so forth today. So I wanted to have that as some housekeeping at the beginning. But you do some moderation coaching. You're a behavioral specialist. And you have a different story of recovery, and we will get into that, and I'll let you guide that as far as your own personal story, dealing with some codependency and narcissistic parent and such. So, lots and lots to go into. But before we do, let's start with just how things are going for you these days. I want to hear more about the Sinclair Method. Let's just jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you have going on these days.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I have a PhD in counseling psychology. And I got that in my early 50s. It wasn't my first career. And as I talk to you a little bit about my background, you'll see why I ended up in this space. But I have worked in several different places, and I work in multiple spaces right now. I work sort of a full-time job for a national company, and it is a traditional recovery company that does IOP and abstinence-based treatment. But they have allowed me to introduce a program there that is a moderation management program, and it's health balance, I can say that. And I have grown that program in the last 6 years from one group of 8 people to 6 groups and over 65 people. And I've been training. We have over 120 counselors, so I train them on moderation, what it is. And then we fully support the Sinclair Method, which of course is medication-assisted treatment to help people reduce their drinking. And it makes it a lot easier. And so combined with that, the perfect storm, so to speak, combined with behavioral skills, shifting one's mindset. I'm also certified in applied positive psychology. And so I use those techniques and incorporate all the newest research from APP that we can help people actually feel differently about alcohol. And I've taken people who are, severe alcohol use disorder, people who are drinking daily, every day, 10 or more drinks, 200, 300 drinks a week, like really high volume drinkers. And instead of going through detox, and which can be dangerous and difficult on the body as we age as well, we're able to get them on naltrexone and practice the Sinclair Method. And it's proving to be extremely successful and positive. So I've been in that space of coaching or counseling for moderation, for exclusively niching all day, every day for the last 6 years. And so, and I'm
Wow.
very active in the community doing podcasts and linking with other companies and doctors and services that are also in that niche area. So really
Very
exciting.
cool. It is exciting. Wow. And it's, to me, like, it seems very cutting edge. And like, I would have thought, the last, like, say 3 years or so, like, you and I were talking about like the increase in variety in non-alcoholic beverages. And I'd say specifically over the last 3 years, like what I was used to seeing walking into a grocery store, see, 2 different types you can buy is now 12 linear feet of wines, beers,
Yes,
mixers. So it's
yes.
amazing to
Because
see. So yeah,
the
sorry, go ahead.
pandemic caused big
Ye-
changes in our
Right.
thoughts and ideas about alcohol. And many people found themselves at home and beginning to drink earlier and earlier in the day. And so that was the huge turnaround for what I do. It was small. And then we had this pandemic, and all of a sudden we doubled, tripled, quadrupled,
Yeah.
our need for this, because not everyone wants to stop drinking. Let's
Right.
face it, people enjoy drinking, right? That's the
Yeah.
problem. So
Yes. Yeah.
when I first meet people, I say drinking's not the problem, and they look at me like, "What are you talking about?" Yes, it is. I'm like, "No, drinking isn't the problem. Over drinking is the problem.
Ah,
When we
gotcha.
overdrink, when we drink too much, but 1 or
Yeah.
2 drinks, it doesn't ruin your life for
Right.
most
Right.
people,
For
right?
most people. Yeah,
For
exactly.
most people, 1 or
Yeah.
2 drinks once in a while, maybe 2, 3 days a week, is not going to kill you. But
Yeah.
it's when you're going to drink 5 or more, which is a binge, or 20, and do it daily, and drink a handle of vodka in 3 days, or
Hmm.
a fifth of vodka. I just read somewhere where George Washington was a heavy drinker. He could drink 3/5, 3 liters of bourbon in a day.
Good
That
Lord.
Yes, George
Wow. George
Washington, dude, no
Washington.
wonder he had no teeth, right?
Right. I was gonna say, no wonder the wooden teeth is that explains that now. My goodness.
He drank everything, breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
Good
apparently. Yeah.
Lord. Yeah. Oh my goodness. It would be so interesting to see, be a fly on the wall for some of those, like, old timey
Conventions,
people. Yeah.
yes.
Conventions, right? Of these people that were so regarded as like leaders of our, of countries, and yet they're just lushes, right? Like that's,
Well,
wow. I didn't know that
ultimately
about him.
salespeople, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
salespeople really struggle because that's part of their work, is to wine and dine
Yeah.
customers. And
100%.
maybe that was the beginnings, George Washington and his ilk were all trying to sell an idea to people of freedom.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Here,
so,
drink up. I
yeah.
got a good idea for you. Yeah.
And we continue the tradition at conferences all over the world.
Right. 100% accurate. Yeah, no, I love how you mentioned that. It's like yeah, absolutely. The pandemic is what really had this massive shift in the way that
Yeah.
people, like, the relationships with alcohol. Since then, you hear certain terms that are really buzzy now, like sober curious, conscious drinking, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So I think, yeah, like you were very cutting edge in the way that you saw that coming, or that you started, viewing that as like an opportunity area some 6 years ago, which is well before. And as you mentioned, over that 6-year period, specifically the last 3, just exponential growth, right?
Yeah. And in order to learn more about it, I attended lots and lots of TSM meetups, or the Sinclair
Mm,
Method meetups. I went every Wednesday night and listened to the people that were using the medication and talking about their results. And I read a lot of the research from Dr. Sinclair, and
mm,
he was a very strong proponent of counseling alongside of taking the pill, because he said it wasn't a
yeah.
magic pill. And what I'm
Mm,
finding out there as this method is growing, and it's a burgeoning field, it's getting bigger and bigger. I'm finding that a lot of services provide the medication, the prescription, but they don't always provide adequate counseling or coaching alongside. There'll be
sure.
maybe 15-minute calls a week or something. And
Mm,
and here's what I find is the dichotomy. I've worked for 15 years in the abstinence-based space, right? And when people come in, we look at alcohol is a symptom of a greater problem. There's always underlying fuel to why someone's drinking. We don't drink because we like the taste. It's never that. It's always,
yeah.
when I used to teach, I also taught in college these classes, and the other people to become alcohol and drug counselors. And my theories class included at least 32 different theories of alcoholism.
Oh, wow.
So
32.
32, and there are more than that since that period as well. So when you look at a person as a whole, sometimes it's childhood trauma, sometimes it's conditioning, sometimes it's genetics, and then even more so epigenetics. Sometimes it's set and setting. Sometimes they start drinking later in life or way later in life when there are big shifts in jobs or spouses or life things that come and go. Like there are a lot of reasons people start drinking, late onset,
Good point,
early
actually.
onset, phase related drinking, lots of different kinds. And every time we have someone come into treatment for abstinence based, we always address the psychological alongside. We have them do exercises, we have them do thought writing assignments to help root out and what's going on and where's the pain, like Gabor Mate says. It's not the addiction, the pain, right? So we look for root for that. But in the space of TSM and moderation, most places are not looking for the pain. They're not doing the counseling end of it. They're not doing the psychological support, the mental health support that people need. And it's not that everyone has a great big story to tell, but everyone has a story to tell that's connected, intrinsically connected, and behaving as though it's the fuel for their drinking. So it becomes default, and then physiologically, your body picks up on this especially good response. It says, more. I just want more, right?
Right,
So,
of course.
But it always starts with something underlying, whether it's a disease, like something that's uncomfortable, whether it's just, I can't get to that space of relaxation after work, or a party's no fun without it, or I can't go out and talk to a bunch of people if I don't have at least a shot, like, because something, there's some latent anxiety, or a lot of times social anxiety plays a part. And so what's my favorite space to work in with people, regardless of their goal, is to find what's eating Gilbert grape. I like to say, find what that is. And each individual person represents a puzzle. And having ADHD and working all these different puzzles, it's been like the perfect career for me. It's
right. Yeah.
15 years later, and it's still fun and it's still interesting. And when people find relief and healing, it's why I go to work, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
And we get paid too. That's so cool.
Yeah, and then as a side, you get paid as well, right? So it's great. Yes, absolutely. A lot of great things in there, and you mentioned, like, when you start mentioning different scenarios as far as like what could lead people into that addictive behavior, initially I was like, wow, that seems like a lot. But then as soon as you just rattle off 5 to 7 of them, I'm like, oh yeah, no, okay, you're right. And then from there, I'm sure there's so many different reasons or things
and
to do it.
little nuances and
Nuances,
little
definitely.
things. Each person has their own, like a Rubik's Cube, right? Everybody has a way to solve their puzzle.
I love it, like looking at it as a puzzle. And the whole Gabor Mate thing was like definitely changed my whole perspective of it, right? It's like beyond just the mechanics of like the drinking, and if you put all your energy into that, then that's the triage, right? Get the drink out of your hand per se, but then if you're not looking at why you had the drink there in the first place, then there's a very good chance of relapse. So I like what he says about that.
I trained I do continuously train other counselors, as well as associate counselors that are just learning the field. And I always talk about the clients are exactly the same, whether they're choosing moderation or choosing abstinence. People are still people, and they're still struggling with exactly the same issues. So we should be, regardless of their goal, we have to support their goal, because our clients are autonomous. We're not telling them what to do, right? We're helping them get the goal they define. And so I love being able to offer a second thing, but also that, while they're autonomous, we can't force them into doing something. So, but we do know the etiology, we know the underlying causes, so we need to treat them the same and have them do much of the same kind of treatment, and just accept as a abstinence-based counselor that there is another way. I feel like Yoda, there is another way.
I love that. So cool. Let's say, how would you summarize, like, you gave a little bit of what the Sinclair method is, but how would you just summarize it in a few sentences, as far as like if somebody's here, like, which is also like TSM, as you've mentioned, on the abbreviated form, obviously, right? How would you summarize the method? And obviously you've been doing it for a while, so you're very passionate about it. So
it's very easy. It is the prescription of 50 milligrams of naltrexone in a pill. It's nalthamine the UK, over in Europe, it's the same
Yeah.
thing, but it comes under a different name. But here we call it naltrexone. You just take it 1 hour before you drink, and you drink as normal as usual. You only take
Mm,
it on the days that you drink, and you don't
mm,
take it in the morning. You just take it an hour before you drink. Most people drink in the evening. So,
yeah.
about 15% of people do not tolerate naltrexone very well, but it's
Mm,
effective for 86% of the people who try it. So it's
wow.
much better than talk therapy, right?
Yeah.
And it,
Yeah.
it will lead to what we call pharmacological extinction. So you
Mm,
can become completely sober, and not because you're white knuckling it, forcing, but because you just aren't interested anymore. It's so much
wow.
easier to let go when you don't really care about
Yeah.
it.
Wow. Interesting. Very cool. And then, so you, like you say, that you have this perfect storm of, you have this background of being able to do like the mental and the mindset,
Mhm.
everything, the other stuff in behind it. So you have the physicality of like taking the pill, the reaction that it has with your body, and then you can then be also there to help them, guide them mindset wise as well.
Yeah. One of the things I've really noticed that I don't know if everyone noticed it, but the protection of supply is one of the things that clients will do when they have access to alcohol. They want to, and they're not done drinking yet. They
Mm,
keep a supply, and they're very anxious about having access to their supply. So they protect
yeah.
their supply. They make sure there's
Yeah.
alcohol in the house or in the car or somewhere easily
Mhm.
accessible. So there's this anxiety, and it's also the fight or flight response. So I spend
Wow.
a great deal of my time, I say, amping down the energetic charge of anxiety about
Ah,
availability of alcohol. So we shift them from being, oh my gosh, and worrying and anxious about it, and I got to stop and I can't drink it. I really focus on reducing that experience for people and saying, if you don't have it at home, really take a deep breath. There's a store down the street.
right. Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's omni-available. It's
Yeah.
okay if you don't
Right.
have some today. You can just
Yeah.
hop in the car and go get, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
and then being able to say, well, you don't need as much as you used to have anyway, because now you're only having 2 drinks a day instead of
Right.
10. And
Wow.
it's being able to look at our weeks. One of my main recommendations is for people to count and intentionally drink, like, by the week. So
Mm,
when
mhm.
I have them in a session, we'll talk about, how did your week go? What were your goals? Did you meet them? And then what are the goals for this week? And I associate drinking with an occasion, a birthday,
Mm,
anniversary, bar mitzvah, going out to dinner, barbecues. But to sit home and drink all by yourself, that's really not encouraged, because it's sort of like there's no reason to drink on an ordinary day. It's meant
right.
for celebration. We drink to celebrate, not obliterate.
Ooh, that's a good, there we
Right?
go.
That's
That,
one of
that
our
sums it
mottos,
up.
drink to celebrate,
Yeah,
not obliterate, yeah. To
absolutely.
enhance memories, not erase them.
Ooh, again,
And put
very
the
good.
genie back in the bottle,
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
it back in the
Right. Right.
driver's side, all those like
Yeah.
little catchy things that are that
Smart.
that people can, remember easily.
Remember. Yeah, absolutely. I love all of those actually. Yeah, those are good. Those are good. Ah, yeah. What else? Well, anything as far as like the moderation, before we hopped on here, some of these moderation techniques where you're utilizing some of these wonderful new, non-alcoholic beverages, right? And
Yes,
because there is a ritual around drinking, isn't there? I know for myself, there definitely
absolutely.
was the crack of the can, many different
Oh
things.
yeah,
So
a
yeah,
little.
right? So how is that showing up, and how have you been integrating some of these, non-alcoholic beverages? And then you mentioned some of these other like tonics or different things that you can put in there actually have the opposite of like healthy for you benefits that
Yeah,
you can integrate into that as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They're formulating so many more new things, because the generations now, like, let's say between 30 and 60, right? Looking for health-based, organic health, yeah, herbs and tinctures, and
Yeah.
ashwagandha and lemon balm, and they're, things
Yeah.
that we can find in nature if we had to, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
If we have to suddenly become medicine women, we can find it out in nature.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
all these things come, I think they harken back to a different time of living, like way
Mm,
back in ancient times, where people had to know herbs and things. And so we're returning to that. Organic food used to just be regular food back in the 30s. That's because there were no
right.
additives or preservatives or
Good point. Yeah.
pesticides or all that. Like, it's just normal eating. So when you go back to organic, you start to question all the other things. So alcohol is also very old, but we also put a lot of additives in alcohol now. They're not just the pure thing.
Yeah.
There are like different rules about red wine in Italy, for instance, as there
Oh,
are,
okay.
right? So
I
you might
imagine.
get a cleaner product there that's more naturally based.
Hmm.
So looking at that, when we look at that whole big picture, what's happening now is that companies are looking like, how can we get the same sense of relaxation? Because that's the number one reason people say they drink, so I can relax and reduce my stress. So what are the herbs and tinctures that are effective on humans that aren't harmful or addictive? And they're starting to incorporate those into drinks, like ashwagandha is one of them,
Yeah.
L-theanine, which is a
Yeah.
component of green tea, lemon balm, another one. And so those sorts of things, when combined with limes and coconuts and
Mm.
mint leaves and all that, you can pretty much get a mule that has no
Right.
alcohol, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you had me at limes. I think anything with lime,
Everything
I'm sold.
lime,
So
yes,
yeah, yeah. Same
absolutely.
way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Or
Very cool.
mojito, like there is a
Yes. Yeah.
mojito that's alcohol free, that's a mojito flavor,
Cool.
and that can often be, if you like mojitos and mules, that sort of thing. The alcohol free kombucha flavor Kavita makes it. It's actually
Yeah.
good.
Okay. Yeah. It
It can
sounds
be
good.
very satisfying over ice and in a fancy glass and a little.
Right.
Make it look fancy, make it
Yeah.
appealing, and
Yeah.
your brain can get so tricked. Habit is habit. If you
Yeah.
like to drink out of a wine glass, you can drink
Yeah.
anything out of a wine glass. There is
True.
no wine glass police that comes to your house and says you can't drink, like you can
Yeah.
use that. And often if you're having sparkling water or one
Mm-hmm.
of the alcohol-free drinks and it's in a wine glass, you're feeling
Mm.
fancy and you're sitting
Right.
there watching your movie and you don't even realize you're not drinking.
Yeah.
The
100%.
brain
Yeah.
understands this repeated behavior,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
ritual exists without the alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's what's worked so so well for me. That, like I say, the cracking of the can, now that they have, like actual craft beer, like craft
Yeah.
IPAs that are
Yes.
non-alcoholic. Right.
Mhm.
And because I was like, oh, I was getting into that at my end of my drinking career, because that's when the craft brewery thing was really blowing up. This was
Yeah.
2018, 2019, right? And yeah, so for me to be able to have that now, I swear, and my wife and I talk about this because she's the same thing. We'll pour it into like the pint glass,
Yeah.
and you have that
Yeah.
first sip, and I swear I get the same like brain chemistry, and we're both looking at each other. We're like, wow, like this, my brain does not know the difference.
Not
In
know the
fact, it's
difference.
like
And that's
it's
true of
yeah.
heroin and methamphetamine, by the way. I used to
Wow.
work in the incarcerated population. I would go every Saturday to the jail and I wanted to test it out, and they were in agreement. I said, we're going to do a meditation on using your drug of choice. So
Hmm.
we had everybody go through it mentally, go through the ritual to getting their heroin ready or their methamphetamine ready or whatever they did with like prescription pills. A lot of chemistry happens. Anyway, so we did
Right.
this meditation, and afterwards, most of them reported that they thought, oh my God, I'm high and I'm sitting in jail. How did this happen?
Oh,
Because the
wow.
brain rehearses it and knows and releases its own dopaminic response regardless of the artificial opiates you're introducing.
Yeah.
We have our own intrinsic opioids the body manufactures, and cannabinoids, which is why the body accepts foreign ones, because we already make our own. We have the receptors for
Yeah.
them, so these mimic our own body chemistry.
Isn't that fascinating? It's like, what's the word?
Fascinating.
Endogenous, right? Isn't that the term? It's like
Yep.
DMT and all these other different things.
All
So
these
cool.
things that we
Yeah.
just need to learn to operate the spaceship.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And here we are, like how many generations in, we're like, we're kind of on the cusp. We're getting better with it. We'll say.
We're getting better. We're
For
getting more
sure. For sure.
organic.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would love to hear, a little bit about your story too. Right. It's from when we were talking, before the Kyle Cease event, as we're getting let back into the arena there, we had a good chance to connect. So yeah, I'd like to the floor is yours, whatever, whatever parts you'd like to mention. Because yeah, you've definitely had a very interesting life leading up till now.
Yeah, I had a few ups and downs. I try not to make it too long, but
Sure.
so I was born in Canada, just in Nipissing, Ontario, and I was 6 years old when my parents came to the United States of America, which seemed to be a really big deal at the time. And I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and pretty shy, pretty much like my friends so-called friends used to call me a houseplant because I was kind of fearful and shy and afraid. I was the youngest of three kids, an older brother, an older sister, mom and dad. My dad was working a lot. He was an entrepreneur. So I became an entrepreneur later in life, first generation immigrant child, high propensity for women, first generation women to be entrepreneurs as well.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that
Interesting.
till I owned my business.
Very
But
cool.
anyway, yeah, went to college and graduated with a degree in veterinary medicine as a technologist. And so I went to work as a technologist in the state of Washington, and I worked in cardiovascular mechanics, oddly enough. And so we looked at a lot of what do you call those, sonograms of
Okay.
hearts
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and pumping and all that. And we
Yeah.
did a lot of terminal surgeries, and I was in charge of getting the patients and doing the surgeries and doing what we were doing when we were studying the isochronic beats of the heart. And for those of you who understand that, that's okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just, it's measuring pressure and volume in a heart so that we understand what it was we were studying the nature of the heart attacks that athletes were having when they would do cocaine after playing basketball. There was a rash of that, and we were trying to figure out why that was happening. We were working on those sorts of things. So anyway, at the time I was married to a veterinarian, and he was an alcoholic, and I couldn't understand why I was in a relationship with an alcoholic. But over the course of the marriage, which was very short-lived, and I came home in bits and pieces crying, and had to retool the factory, so to speak. And so I cried a lot, and I did some creative painting work, and then I retooled the factory. I went back to school, and I got a master's degree in business. And a few years later, when that was all done, I went from veterinary medicine to business, and I started buying restaurants. And 10 years later, I had 6.
Wow.
And then the cash flow just was not happening. I had a few good ones, I had a few bad ones, and the last one was sucked everything. I had gotten remarried at the time, and by this time I had 2 children, and I crashed and burned in a $1.2 million bankruptcy. And then I cried all the time, every day. I was like dysfunctional. And one of my customers came in one of the last few nights the restaurant was open, and we had talked, and I knew him as an acquaintance, and we started talking about, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. And my marriage was falling apart, and we talked about some of that. And he said, you sound codependent. And I said, what are you talking about, Willis? Like, what? And he said, yeah, I'm going to take you to a meeting. And so he took me to my very first Al-Anon meeting, and that's what totally and completely changed my life.
Wow.
That was in 2003. And that very day I went to a meeting, and everything I heard there, I was crying like a baby, couldn't stop. And then as I went through a divorce and losing all of my worldly possessions and my home, and then my car broke down, I had 2 little children, I had nowhere to live, and I had $400 in my name, and it was like, I'm not borrowing another penny from anybody. I'm going to figure this out. And through the kindness of strangers in Al-Anon, I found a place to live. And my sponsor gave me work for $8 an hour. And what she did was, because I was so broken and so I couldn't even breathe, I was so identified with my business. And she looked at me, and magically, biblically, she said 3 times, you are not your business. You are not your business. You are not your business. And it seemed to break a spell that I was under. It seemed to change my perspective. And so I was still broken. I didn't know what I was going to do. And she said, come and clean my house. I'll pay you $8 an hour. Now I had 6 restaurants, 300 employees, and I'm going to not go and clean someone's house for $8 an hour. But I wasn't, that was as much as I could muster in my mind. Like, okay, I think I can do that, because I was, people would say hello and I'd cry. So I'd go to her house and I would vacuum and I would do dishes. And she sponsored other people, and she was a lovely psych nurse. So it was exactly the right person for me. She was my angel. And to this day, I believe she still has wings. And I would go and I would wash dishes, and other people would come to the house and they'd say, hi, Michelle. And they'd pat me on the back, and I would cry as much tears into the sink as there was hot water to wash those dishes. Like, I swear, half the sink was my tears. And that lasted for about 4 or 5 months that I couldn't go to work. I couldn't think about the next thing because I was a mess.
Yeah.
And somehow I
Wow.
earned enough money. And then I started dating a guy, and he happened to be a contractor. And so he gave me work for $10 an hour. And so for 3 years, I worked full time as like contracting. So building things, painting things, refinishing things. I worked on, a beautiful $80,000 kitchen, hand painted. I would
Wow.
go and match antique woodwork, make their woodwork match their antique woodwork. So I was good at
Yeah.
faux finishing. And
Yeah.
I had a little business at the time. I called it my 2 cents. And that's how I was able to pay the rent of $400 a month. And then I got inspired to start writing. And at an Al-Anon meeting, someone said, you have such good little ideas. Like, you should write them all down. And yeah, you should write a book. And so several of the members said, yeah, you seem to be moving along quite well. Like, how do you remember all this? I don't know. And so I wrote everything down. And then I was asked to volunteer at the jail because my sponsor said it'll be a good thing to go do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. These big doors, I had hydraulic doors and check your pockets and metal detectors and another hydraulic door and an airlock. And then you go in and they're watching you on cameras. You got to click on things and they let you in the elevator and then they let you into the room. And then you enter a room and it's full of men who have committed crimes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like dangerous crimes, murders,
Yeah.
and
Man.
perverted things and
Yeah.
theft and violence. And
Wow.
I was just little me, I'm 5 feet tall and 120 pounds. And I'm
Yeah.
like, so, and I was afraid, but I went in and the first thing I taught was, computer skills. And they paid me good money for that. I'm like, okay, great. And then I taught that class. It wasn't my thing because I wasn't a huge computer person at the time. And so, but I did. I helped those folks and write resumes and learn how to use Word and all that sort of thing. So it was fun. And then I said, I really like going there. I was very drawn to that group of people because I just could feel their pain. I resonated with their pain, curiously enough. Later on, I found out about that. But nonetheless, I started I was an atheist when I entered Al-Anon, and I came out the other end having faith again, believing in God, something greater than myself, and that it wasn't a terrible, awful thing. It was what I ended up believing in was a power greater than myself that was benevolent and good and understood me and was smart. And that's what Al-Anon helps you identify, like, what would God be if you could pick, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
so sort of attributes. I was raised Catholic and I had moved away from that. And so through Al-Anon, I sort of moved back and I was then able to look at biblical texts and things like that and study and learn. And along with a lot of other belief systems, I had to know what everyone else was believing as well. So I took a deep dive into all of that for a while. But then I was praying about one day about, gee, I'd like to work with these people, but I don't want to teach computer skills. Can I do something else? And then it came to me that I should, my sponsor also said, you teach about the 12 steps then. So I said, okay. So I figured out a 12-step class. I didn't have any training or anything. And I would go to the jail and I would teach the men for a couple hours and the women for a couple hours. I'd be there 3 hours. And when I got done, it was like my feet wouldn't even touch the ground. I was so happy to be discussing it and so empowered and so relieved. And I was pure joy to be able to go there and talk. And it was a lot of fun. And the women were the women's group suggested that I put this all down because they liked my what I was saying. So I put it all down and I actually published one book, one single copy, and brought it to the jail and gave it to the women's group. And I'm like, here, pass this around, write in it, tell me what you want, and I'll go back and I'll redo it. So they did. I couldn't tell you who the women were. I know there were 12 to 14 people, and they passed it around for a week. And I got the book back, and inside all the margins were a bunch of things. And one of the prominent members, she said, put in all your stories. Your stories are missing from there, and we like your stories. So I went back and I put my stories in there, and I kept teaching there. I taught there for 3 years for free every Saturday morning, and it was just my joy and my healing and my privilege to do so. And then when I wrote the book, someone said, why don't you take it to treatment? Because treatment centers could use this. So I took a deep breath and I went to a treatment center. But I said, hey, I wrote this book. I know nothing. I just went through Al-Anon. Like they're
Yeah.
probably thinking, who do you think you are, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the gentleman who was the director said, this is really good stuff. He said, but I can't put you into the rooms without a license. So he told me to go to school, and he called up the guy who ran the program and said, I've got a good candidate for you. And I went up and did an interview, and sure enough, I was working construction, so I was making pretty much my own hours. So I went to school and got my license to become an alcohol and drug counselor. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
that's how I ended up becoming an alcohol drug counselor. And that
Wow.
same man then gave me a job when I was an intern. And it was great, but I had an office in the coffee room. and next to me was a whole bank of phones that would ring constantly on and off all day. And
Oh, perfect.
bracelet monitor
Oh,
equipment,
okay. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
at-home bracelet monitoring. There was
Of course.
the bank was right there, and it would beeping and ringing, and when people would go out of their area,
Yeah.
right? So there was all these alarms going
Oh
off,
my
and the coffee
goodness.
machine was behind me, and I thought, oh my God, and there was no room to be promoted. And so I thought, this is kind of a dead end job. I like what I do, but I'm not going to go anywhere here soon. So
Yeah.
I went back to school when I was 48 and got a PhD.
Hell yeah.
So I
Congratulations.
thought I can have
Yeah.
room for advancement. And
Yeah.
so in between then, I moved to another agency. And then I worked all their levels. They had a wide variety from a detox unit, all to a high intensity residential inpatient, to dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient groups 3 days a week for 3 hours with a lot of mental health, dual, heavy co-occurring disorder group. And then I really loved to work residential, but we also had extended care. So that would be 3 to 6 months follow-up after someone's in a residential treatment area, and then stepping down to IOP daytime, 3 days a week, 3 times a week, and then an aftercare program. I worked adolescent program, and then they opened a new a methadone clinic, and so I helped open that with them as well. And so
Wow.
so all different aspects. So it went
Yeah.
from discussing alcohol and drug use as a component of the incarcerated system to all of the varieties of care. And then when that finished up for me, the methadone clinic was very difficult in terms of the management.
Gotcha.
And the clientele were pretty heavy, energetically heavy to work with.
Sure.
And I had some very amazing experiences there. And then one day it was just, I couldn't do it anymore. And I watched myself in a sort of a disconnected way, put in my resignation without a plan for a job. I just said I was going on vacation and I wouldn't be back. And I couldn't see myself coming back to work here after my vacation.
Hey, fair enough.
I came home from work and my son looked at me. He said, what's going on? Because he could tell there was something up. And I said, I quit my job today. He goes, what are you thinking? I said, I don't know, but I can't go back there.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Then I became a life coach online, a dating coach for about six, because I couldn't think of anything else to do for the time being. And I did the online thing. Wasn't particularly successful doing that. I mean, people wanted a lot of free advice, and a lot of people were pretty angry. They had a lot of latent anger towards men. And it was just like, it wasn't quite my space. So then I applied for work online, and the rest was history. I've stayed with that company for my day work, and have been a supervisor there for 5 years, 6 years almost. And so it's been a really great opportunity. And I've always continued to on the side do my own thing in coaching. And so that's how I have fingers all over. I've done different podcasts all over, and I'm always working, whether I'm consulting with people. I have a colleague that has a company in Scotland, my favorite place in the world. So I'll talk to him from time to time. And
very cool.
Looking at a project now in Kenya, possibly. And so
you're mentioning that.
Wherever, if I can travel a little with my work, that's super awesome.
Just a bonus, right? Just gravy. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your story. Quite so inspiring. Like, I love so many elements about it, but the one that really sticks out is, like, so many times you bet on yourself. It was you know, even like you're saying, you're almost like watching yourself giving the resignation. It's like this
What am
intuition
I
just sort of took
thinking?
over and you're like, whoa, did
Yeah,
I actually do that? And you're telling your
yeah.
son
I
and he
have a
reflects that back to you.
mortgage. What am I
Yeah.
thinking?
Just kind of walk away from it. And then like going back to school at 48, you know, like it's cool, man. It's such a good story. So thanks for sharing all of that. The massive bankruptcy and then just you being as honest as you are, forthcoming in 4 months of essentially just
Nothing.
crying and being out in the
Right.
dumps, right? And right. It's just so amazing, man. Amazing, like story of resiliency and you know, what is the phrase? The target finds the arrow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
you found what you were made to do. So very cool, very
I,
cool. Thank you.
yeah. In looking for a new career, one of the, you know, you read a bunch of books, My Parachute and all that different things to try and figure
Yeah,
out what the hell am I supposed to do with myself.
yeah.
And I read somewhere in one of these million career books that what did you like to do as a child? What did you do naturally? And I thought, I talked all the time and I got in
Mm,
trouble. I went to a Catholic school and I was continuously in trouble when I was a kid. I had
yeah,
ADHD, so of course I was talking all the time, getting up and walking. The poor nuns. No wonder they
yeah,
were
yeah.
frustrated with me, right? And
Sure,
I thought,
sure.
if I could get paid to talk,
Yeah,
never work a day in my life. So I
there we
looked
go.
for something I could do and talk where I
Smart.
thought that I could be helpful to others, and that's what
Yeah.
got me counseling. Mhm.
Smart. Yeah, great advice. Keep it nice and simple too. I love that advice. Like, what did you like? And that's a big part of like recovery too, I find, is like when you are going back to, you know, things that made you happy in the first place. Because some people are just kind of, you know, there's a state of confusion at first. You're like, oh, what I used to do, it becomes all encompassing, the substances. And it's
Yeah.
like, what the hell did I used to do for fun? You know, and then, so it is
Yes.
go back to your childhood, go back to, you know, the years before you started drinking and using drugs,
Yeah.
right?
What was it that lit you up, that made your heart sing, right? I love to
100%.
play
Yeah.
with Tonka trucks too, but so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
between the Tonka trucks and
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah. Professional Tonka truck player with her. You could have like a YouTube channel of it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe I could be like
Yeah.
like those big, you know, commercial big dump truck drivers, you know,
Yeah. There you
could
go.
be the
There you go.
operators, but I never
Yeah.
pursued that. I just
Yeah.
thought
Yeah. That's next. That's next on the list, right? Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to be my next career.
Yeah.
A retirement job.
That's a retirement job. Yeah. He'll just do, yeah. You do that for free anyways. So, you know, yeah. So
Yeah.
cool. So Michele, thank you so much for coming on. I know that you have a podcast this upcoming. It's in the works. By the time we release this, it's going to be very close to seeing the light of day, I imagine.
Yeah.
Drink Shrinks. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So my colleague Linda Bogan and I get along famously. She also works with me in the moderation program, and we just have a lot of the same ideas and philosophy. And she's just so funny. And we thought there should be something out there where people are discussing moderation and how to do that, and what are the mindsets around that, with some like longevity and some levity, I guess I should say,
Mm, yeah.
some levity in
Yeah.
there, so that
Yeah.
we're kind of, you know, we can thumb our nose, or, you know, tongue in cheek sort of things, because there are aspects of drinking that aren't so serious and don't have to be so hard fought and tough and, oh my gosh, and life or death, right? Yes. Is
Yeah.
it a dangerous chemical in excess? Yes. But drinking, we both really firmly feel that drinking is not the problem.
Mm,
Over drinking is the problem.
right.
Over
Right.
drinking.
Yeah.
And, you know, so in my work of 16 years of counseling people with, you know, substance use disorders, it was never because they had one or two drinks here, you know, once in a while. It's
Yeah.
always because it becomes daily, it becomes high volume, high frequency, and then
Mm,
it
mhm.
becomes deleterious to all aspects of your life.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Well said. Well said. So everybody, if you're looking for another, you know, addiction recovery podcast, definitely check that out. Drink Shrink sounds amazing. I love the snappy title.
Yeah.
Sounds like a very cool concept, and there's definitely room for that. You know, there's so many different we call it quit literature and podcasts and such out there, but this one sounds very, very unique again to your niche that you guys are working in. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
We're
looking forward to
excited.
hear.
We're all excited about
Yeah,
it.
I'm excited as well. I'll definitely check it out when it does come out. So
Thank you,
Dr.
Matt.
Michele,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for coming on today. It was a
My
pleasure
pleasure.
having the conversation, get to know you more and hear your story and share it with everybody. Any final words? Like, you know, if somebody is, I always say if somebody's, you know, sort of on that fence or in that sober, curious space, you know, what sort of advice would you give them at this stage of the game?
I would not, I would take heart in that there it's no longer one size fits all. There are lots of programs out there. I like my program in particular,
A
but
little biased. Yeah.
yeah, a little biased, but
Yeah.
you can find me on LinkedIn that's the easiest way to contact me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Moderation Management Directory. If you're looking for moderation friendly therapists, I'm on there. Also you can find me as a coach at the sinclairmethod.org. I'm also there. And so there's lots of different ways to find me out there. And I'm willing to work individually. I got ideas. I have places to put for programs. If you want to have other like-minded individuals to be around, there are free podcasts, lots available out there. And so, yeah, give us a try.
Perfect. I love it. Thanks so much, Michele. And yeah, we'll definitely keep in touch. And yeah, we'll see about having you come back on, especially after you get that new podcast up. It'd be cool to have you on and have some reflections on how the show is going and everything. So yeah, your door's always welcome for you to come back. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
My pleasure.